They never warned you about this part, did they? No textbook, no commercial, no doctor's office poster ever said, one day, without warning, your body may begin to vanish not all at once, but inch by inch. No one told you that strength wouldn't be taken from you in a dramatic flash, but would instead slowly drift away so quietly. In fact, that you'd barely notice until one day you wake up and you're not yourself anymore. I've been a doctor for over 35 years, a men's health specialist. And now, in retirement, I speak to you not from behind a white coat or a sterile clinic room, but from experience, both mine and the thousands of men I've walked with through some of the most vulnerable chapters of their lives. There's a moment many men face that we don't speak about. It's not an accident or a diagnosis, it's far more subtle, far more dangerous. It's that day you stand in front of the mirror and realize something's wrong, but you can't name it. You haven't been in a car crash, you haven't fallen ill, but you look at yourself and see someone duller, softer, faded. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night, even in retirement. No one told you what that really was. They'll say it's aging. They'll shrug and tell you it's natural, that this is just how life goes after 60. But that's only because they've never had the courage to look deeper, or worse, they never cared to. What if I told you that this slow fade, the loss of your fire, your edge, your desire, isn't because you're too old, but because something inside you is slowly starving? Not starving for love or attention. Not starving for testosterone shots or blue pills. I'm talking about something far more fundamental, far more primal: blood flow. You see, your body isn't broken. It's just been neglected, forgotten by systems that assume you're too far gone to matter. Your muscles, your nerves, even your intimacy, they didn't quit on you. They were silenced. Silenced by a system that stopped circulating life where it was needed most. When you lose blood flow to your legs, to your pelvic region, to your reproductive organs, it's not just a physical issue. It's a psychological one. Because what begins in the body soon travels to the mind. You start walking slower. You start saying no more often. You avoid closeness not because you don't want it, but because you're terrified you won't be able to respond if it comes. That terror? I've seen it. In the eyes of husbands, grandfathers, veterans men, who spent a lifetime giving everything to others and are now quietly wondering, am I still a man if I can't feel like one anymore? Let me ask you something difficult. When was the last time you felt proud of the way your body worked? When was the last time you felt alive in your own skin? I don't mean feeling okay. I mean feeling bold, vital, present with strength in your legs, fire in your belly, and confidence behind your smile. If you have to think back more than a few years, something's wrong. But don't worry, that wrong can be reversed. Now let me be clear. I'm not here to sell you miracle cures. I'm not a salesman. I'm a retired doctor who still believes men deserve truth, not gimmicks. And here's the truth. If blood stops flowing, life stops showing. But if you can restart the flow, you can restart your life. And I'm going to show you how. What I'll reveal in the next few moments might surprise you, because it won't require a gym. It won't require a doctor's appointment. You don't need to lift heavy weights or jog for miles. You just need to move again with intention, with precision, with purpose. Not like you're chasing your youth, but like you're restoring the man you've always been. In this video, I'll guide you through 5 specific movements and 1 powerful nightly routine that I've seen change lives. Not theories. Not experiments. Real protocols I've taught to real men. These are techniques designed to reawaken the parts of your body time has made you forget. We'll begin at the root of it all, your legs. Because strength, confidence, and even intimacy don't start in the bedroom, they start in your circulation. In the vessels and muscles that carry life to the places that need it most. But before we begin, let me ask you for something small but important. If what I've said so far resonates with you, if you felt that slow fading, if you stood in front of that mirror and asked yourself, what happened? Then please, subscribe to this channel. It's how I know I'm reaching the men who need to hear this. It's how I know to keep going, keep sharing, keep fighting for your strength, even in retirement. Now, I want to leave you with a question, a moment of reflection, before we move on. Question for you. Which do you believe is the real cause of lost strength and intimacy after 60? A. It's just part of aging. There's nothing to be done. B. It's reduced circulation, and with the right steps, it can be restored. Drop your answer in the comments. Type A or B, there's no judgment here, just conversation, just truth. just a chance to learn and grow together. Now, let's move forward. Because trust me, what comes next is where the change truly begins. When men walk into my clinic, they often want to talk about the end result, the lack of desire, the absence of morning vitality, the quiet fear that they're losing their edge, but rarely does anyone come in asking about their legs. That's the part that always strikes me. They'll sit down and share stories about fading intimacy, weakening strength, or not feeling like themselves anymore, and yet, the real beginning of all those symptoms lies far lower than they expect. As a doctor who spent more than 3 decades focusing on men's health, I've learned to look where most people don't, and when I began connecting the dots, I saw something profound. The foundation of male vitality isn't built in the bedroom, it's built in the legs, in the vessels, in the flow. In places we don't think to honor until they stop working properly. You see, when your legs begin to weaken, something far more important than muscle is lost. Blood flow slows, circulation falters. And with it, your body starts rationing where it sends life. It pulls away from areas it doesn't consider essential anymore, like your groin, your reproductive system, even your skin's sensitivity. The body's logic is simple. If the legs aren't moving, there's no need to send abundant blood down there. But your body doesn't understand that your identity, your sense of strength and presence is deeply tied to those very regions. And once blood flow to the lower body is reduced, it's not long before sensation fades, arousal becomes inconsistent, and confidence begins to quietly erode. Men begin to think they're just too old for certain feelings, when in fact, their legs have simply stopped sending the right signals. That's why I always begin with the legs. Because when you restore movement, you restore message. Blood flow is the body's language, and it speaks loudest through motion. There's a muscle I call the body's forgotten heart. Most textbooks label it the soleus. It's nestled in your calves, deep beneath the surface. You won't see it in the mirror, and most men don't even know it exists. But when you activate this muscle, you kickstart one of the most powerful mechanisms in the male body, the upward return of blood. This little engine in your calves works like a secondary heart. It pushes blood upward against gravity back through the veins in your legs, pelvis, and into the torso. And if you don't use it, that blood stagnates. It pools. It misses the mark. Your core systems go undernourished. And over time, your body simply adjusts to the reduced demand by giving you reduced results. But here's the beautiful part. It can be reversed. Easily. You don't need a gym. You don't need equipment, you need a chair, a firm surface, and a decision to reawaken the flow that age has merely forgotten, not destroyed. One of the simplest ways I teach men to reactivate the soleus is what I call the seated pulse pump. It may sound modest, but don't be fooled. It's quiet medicine, gentle, targeted, and incredibly effective. You sit tall in a chair, back straight, feet flat on the floor, hip width apart. No tension, no rush. Then, you raise your heels just a little, keeping the balls of your feet and toes firmly grounded. You'll feel a slight tightening in your calf. That's it. That's the muscle waking up. Hold it for a moment, then lower. Repeat, over and over, like a slow, steady drumbeat from your lower body to your heart. Men laugh when I first show them. Doc, that's it? But after 2 weeks, they come back with different expressions. Doc, I feel warmer at night. Doc, I woke up with a pulse again. Doc, I didn't think something that simple could do so much. That's the power of circulation. Once it returns, everything else begins to follow. This exercise, done for just 60 seconds a day, once or twice, while watching television or reading a newspaper, rewires the body to send blood downward again. It's not about sweat, it's not about strain, it's about signal. Every time your heel rises, your body is told, we still need this region. Keep sending life. This isn't just about sex or arousal. It's about sensation, aliveness, that buzzing awareness in your limbs that tells you, I'm here, I'm present. That feeling isn't a luxury, it's your birthright as a man. And no number of candles on a birthday cake should take that away from you. I remember a patient, William, he was 72 when we started. He had stopped walking long distances, said it made him tired. He'd been prescribed medications for low libido, for poor circulation, for blood pressure, but nothing really changed. One day, I asked him to start the pulse pump every morning. Every night, just 1 minute. 3 weeks later, he looked different. He said he was sleeping better. He started doing little laps around the house again. But what struck him most wasn't the physical. It was the psychological. "Doc," he told me, "I don't feel invisible anymore." Invisible. That's the word so many men carry in their later years. The world stops looking. Partners stop reaching, and worse, we stop reaching for ourselves. But if you remember nothing else from this video, remember this. Your body hasn't stopped responding. It's waiting for movement, for signal, for the silent conversation between muscle and mind to begin again. So we start where it all begins, the legs, the foundation, the quiet riverbeds of your strength. Because if we can move the blood, we can move the man, and that changes everything. When you're ready, I'll show you how we move even deeper into the muscles beneath your pelvis. The ones no one talks about but every man needs to reclaim. That's coming next. But for now, remember this. Life doesn't end in silence. It ends when you stop sending messages to the parts of you that matter most. Let's start speaking again through movement, through breath, through attention. Your foundation is still there. Let's wake it up. When men talk to me about control, about stamina, about strength, about the quiet confidence they used to carry, I don't just listen to what they say. I listen to what they don't say. I hear the hesitation. I hear the discomfort. And most of all, I hear the silence surrounding one of the most overlooked yet essential parts of the male body, the pelvic floor. I've been a doctor long enough to remember when no one spoke of it. Back then, the idea that a man's ability to perform, to hold, to sustain, to be present, was rooted in a small, hidden group of muscles buried deep in the base of his pelvis. That wasn't something discussed. It was brushed off, replaced with pills, covered up with shame. But now that I'm retired, I've made it my mission to speak plainly, to say what needs to be said, because too many men have suffered in silence for far too long. Here's what I've learned after decades in this field. Real control begins in the muscles. No one talks about. The pelvic floor is a sling-like group of muscles that sit at the bottom of your pelvis. These muscles support your bladder, your bowel, and yes, your sexual function. They're responsible for the things most men think are automatic. But just like any other part of your body, if they're not used, they weaken. If they weaken, they fail to support. And when they fail, you start noticing changes subtle at first, but deeply personal. You lose the ability to hold, the ability to control, the ability to stay present in the moments that matter most. And what happens next is the most dangerous part. You internalize it. You stop reaching out. You tell yourself this is normal, that this is aging, that it's over. But it's not over, it's dormant, and we can bring it back. I've worked with men who spent years ashamed of their failing control. Men who carried the weight of embarrassment because no one ever told them it wasn't their fault. You weren't lazy. You weren't broken. You just weren't shown the map back to your power. And I want to show it to you now. One of the most effective, accessible, and transformative movements I've taught is what I call the pelvic floor bridge. You don't need a gym. You don't need to be young. You don't even need to feel strong. You just need to lie down, breathe, and be willing to reconnect with your own foundation. You begin on your back, flat, comfortable, supported. Knees bent, feet flat on the ground, shoulder width apart, arms resting gently at your sides. Then you lift your hips, not fast, not high, just enough to create a straight line from your knees to your shoulders. As you rise, you gently squeeze not just your glutes, but the space between your tailbone and your scrotum. That's the core of the pelvic floor. That's the place most men forget exists. And that's where we start. Hold for 5 seconds. Breathe. Stay aware of what you're feeling. Then slowly lower down. 10 to 15 times, once a day. That's all it takes to send a signal to your body. I remember you. I respect you. I want you back. And let me tell you, the results aren't just physical. They're emotional. They're deeply validating. Men tell me that after just a couple weeks, they begin feeling stronger, not only in their hips or abdomen, but in their sense of self. Their posture changes, their presence changes. And often, for the first time in years, they stop bracing themselves for disappointment in intimate moments. One man I worked with, Richard, 69 years old, called me 3 weeks after starting the pelvic bridge. He'd been skeptical, even a little resentful at first. He didn't want to believe something so small could make a difference. But that night, after doing the bridge in silence before bed, his wife reached out to him. And for the first time in months, he didn't retreat. He didn't panic. He responded fully, presently, with confidence. "Doc," he told me, voice trembling, "I didn't know I still had that in me, but he did, and so do you. That's the lesson I want you to carry with you. Your strength was never lost, it was misplaced. Hidden under years of stillness, covered by stress, worn down by shame, but it's still there. The pelvic floor bridge doesn't just build muscle. It builds memory. It teaches your body how to hold again, how to trust itself, how to respond instead of recoil. And as those muscles return, they begin to support your bladder, your erections, your posture, even your balance. Because the pelvic floor is not isolated, it's central. It's the root system from which everything else draws power. Too many men focus only on the exterior, biceps, shoulders, chest. But real power lasting, intimate, undeniable power comes from deep within, from the muscles that are never seen, only felt. And here's the beauty of it. This kind of strength isn't flashy, but it's transformative. It's quiet, but it's foundational. It won't get you compliments at the beach, but it will bring peace into your bedroom, confidence into your relationships, and dignity back into your walk. So if you've ever felt like you're losing control, not just of your body, but of your identity, I want you to know there's a path back. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be young. You just need to be willing. Willing to lie down. Willing to move. Willing to feel again. This is where control begins, not in pills or procedures, but in presence, in awareness, in breath. In muscles that may be quiet now, but are ready to roar back to life. You are not weak. You are not finished. You are rebuilding. And we're just getting started. I want to tell you something that might surprise you. In all my years as a doctor working with men through decades of change, decline, and renewal, there's one truth I discovered that almost no one talks about. A truth so simple, so human, that we overlook it every single day. It's this: the way you breathe is quietly shaping the way you live, and for many men, it's silently shaping the way you love. By the time a man reaches 60, he's usually been breathing wrong for decades. Not because he's careless, not because he doesn't care, but because life taught him to survive instead of feel, to brace instead of open, and it shows. I've watched countless men walk into my office with tight chests, hunched shoulders, and a breath that barely goes deeper than the collarbone. They think their problem is physical, and it is, but what they don't know is that the problem started the moment their breath stopped moving through the body the way it used to. You see, desire is not just a matter of hormones or stimulation. It's not just about what happens in the bedroom. Desire begins much earlier at the level of oxygen, blood flow, nervous system regulation, and emotional safety. And all of these are governed, first and foremost, by breath. I'm not talking about breath in the abstract or in some mystical way. I'm talking about diaphragmatic breathing, the kind of deep, full grounded breath you took as a child, before the world made you anxious, stiff, and guarded. This is the breath that activates your vagus nerve, lowers cortisol, improves circulation, and tells your body, you're safe. You can feel again. Most older men breathe fast, high, and shallow. That kind of breathing keeps your body in a state of quiet emergency. Your nervous system is always alert, always tense, always holding back, and in that state there's no room for intimacy. There's no room for arousal. Because the body is not prioritizing connection, it's prioritizing survival. I remember a man named Charles, 75 years old, a former police officer. Stoic, strong, the kind of man who had built his whole life around control and protection. When he came to see me, he told me he hadn't felt connected to his wife in years. He wasn't in pain. He wasn't sick. But he said he felt emotionally locked out of his own body, like he was observing his life from a distance. I asked him to lie down and breathe. That's it, just breathe. He tried, but his chest rose high and his belly barely moved. I asked him to place one hand on his chest, one on his stomach, and I guided him to pull the breath downward to feel the belly expand, to slow the pace, to soften the throat. And something remarkable happened. Within 5 minutes, tears filled his eyes. Not from sadness, but from recognition. He hadn't breathed that way since he was a boy. We worked on it every day, 10 minutes, morning and night. And within weeks, something shifted. He called me one afternoon, voice lighter than I'd ever heard. "Doc," he said, "I don't know what changed, but I feel here, like I came back to my body." And with that came more than breath. His skin warmed. His sleep deepened. His intimacy returned. Not as a performance, but as a presence. That's what breath does. It brings you back to the present moment, and desire can only live in the present. This practice is simple, but it requires intention. Sit comfortably in a chair or lie down. Rest one hand on your chest, the other on your belly. Breathe in slowly through your nose, counting to 4. As you do, let your belly expand like a balloon. The hand on your chest should remain mostly still. Then exhale gently through your mouth, counting to 6, as if blowing through a straw. Feel the belly soften. That's one breath. Do 10. This activates nitric oxide production in your nasal passages, a molecule that improves blood vessel dilation, lowers blood pressure, and plays a crucial role in erectile function. But more than that, it tells your body that it's okay to open again. That it's okay to feel pleasure without pressure. That it's okay to let go of the armor you've carried for far too long. Breath is not about oxygen alone, it's about permission. Most men don't lack function, they lack the permission to relax into their bodies again. They've been taught that control means clenching. But the truth is, real control comes from softness, from rhythm, from trust. And trust starts with the breath. I've spent years watching men rebuild their sense of manhood not through medication, but through presence. They start to breathe, and the breath brings them back to the body. And once they return to the body, everything begins to change: how they walk, how they speak, how they love. So I ask you now, when was the last time you really breathed? Not just inhaled and exhaled. I mean really breathed slowly, fully, with your entire body engaged in the act of being alive. Because here's what I know, no matter how far you've drifted, no matter how long it's been since you felt desire rise in you like it used to, your breath is still with you. It's the one tool that never leaves. It doesn't cost a thing. It doesn't depend on anyone else. It just waits patiently for you to return to it. And when you do, you'll find more than oxygen. You'll find yourself. You'll find the man who hasn't disappeared, only held his breath for too long. Let's exhale together and begin again. In all my years of practicing medicine, one truth has remained constant. Healing doesn't just happen when we're awake. Some of the most important work your body will ever do, repairing cells, balancing hormones, restoring circulation, happens while you sleep. But here's what they don't teach you in most clinics, and what few people truly understand. The way you prepare your body for rest can quietly determine the quality of your recovery, especially as you get older. I've spent decades working with men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. Men who weren't broken, just tired. Not sick, but stuck. They would describe mornings that felt foggy, legs that felt numb, nights full of interruptions, waking 2, 3, sometimes 4 times to use the bathroom. And they always assumed this was simply part of aging. But as I learned over time, and as I began listening more deeply, I discovered something subtle and powerful. Most of these men had never learned how to prepare their bodies for sleep. The modern world does us no favors. We go from stimulation to shutdown screens, stress, scrolling, and then we drop into bed and expect the body to heal. But the truth is, your body needs a signal. A shift, a transition from the demands of the day to the deep rest of the night. Without it, the body stays alert. The nervous system doesn't let go. And circulation, the very thing that nourishes your lower body, your pelvis, your reproductive system, remains restricted, trapped in a kind of low-level tension that persists even in sleep. This is why I began teaching what I call the nighttime reset. It's not elaborate. It doesn't involve complicated yoga or expensive devices. It's a simple 3-minute practice. But I've watched it transform the sleep quality, morning vitality, and overall health of countless men. Because what you do in those final moments before rest can open the door to healing that pharmaceuticals and supplements alone cannot provide. The body, especially after 60, becomes less efficient at moving blood to the lower extremities during the night. Gravity, muscle inactivity, and reduced vessel elasticity all contribute to this. That's why many older men wake up with cold feet, a heavy pelvis, or that all-too-common frustration, a lack of morning response. But it's not irreversible. The body wants to work. You simply have to remind it how. I remember one man, his name was Henry. He was 74, an engineer, methodical, skeptical. He came to me complaining of sleep issues and fading intimacy. We talked through many aspects of his lifestyle, but what stood out was how abruptly his day ended. He would turn off the TV, brush his teeth, and go straight to bed. No transition, no reset, just a hard stop. I asked him to try something new just for a week. 3 minutes before bed. That's all. The first part of this reset is a stretch I've taught for years. You lie on your back on your bed, or a mat if that's more comfortable, and gently draw both knees toward your chest. Wrap your arms around your shins or the backs of your thighs, whichever feels best. You don't need to force it. Let the lower spine round. Let the hips open. Breathe slowly. Hold for 30 seconds. This movement gently decompresses the lumbar spine, softens the hip flexors, and begins increasing blood flow to the pelvic region. It signals safety. It says, "We're done for the day." Then you release. Let your legs fall flat. Now extend your arms above your head, your legs long in front of you. Reach in opposite directions, arms stretching up, feet pressing down, like you're trying to make yourself just a little taller. Again, hold for 30 seconds. Feel your whole front body open, the chest, the abdomen, the groin. You're inviting space into areas that have been compressed all day. You're allowing flow to return to where it's been denied. Then you repeat once more, knees to chest, once more full body stretch. A total of 3 minutes, no more, no less. And yet the effects ripple far beyond those few minutes. Within a week, Henry told me he was waking up less in the night. His legs felt lighter in the morning. He even said something I've never forgotten. "Doc, I feel like I'm finally resting, not just sleeping. That distinction matters. Sleep is mechanical. Rest is intentional. And true rest, when the body finally feels safe enough to release tension, when blood moves freely through the pelvis, when oxygen reaches the tissues that fuel intimacy and confidence. That kind of rest is what creates healing. That's what this stretch makes possible. And here's something else. This nightly practice doesn't just help your body, it helps your mind. As you breathe through these movements, your nervous system shifts from sympathetic fight or flight to parasympathetic rest and digest. You release adrenaline. You reduce cortisol. And in doing so, you create the conditions for natural hormonal rhythms to take place: testosterone production, nitric oxide release, and deeper sleep cycles that support cognitive and emotional health. All from a stretch you can do in your pajamas. I've always believed the body remembers. It remembers strength. It remembers desire. It remembers balance. But like any memory, it sometimes needs a cue, something to bring it back. This stretch, done with presence, done with breath, becomes that cue. It's a whisper to your nervous system that you're ready to heal, that you're not afraid to feel, that you still belong to this body and it still belongs to you. So tonight, when the house quiets and the distractions fall away, take 3 minutes. Lie down, breathe, move gently. Don't think of it as a stretch. Think of it as a signal, a soft knock at the door of your own restoration. Because real healing isn't loud, it doesn't demand, it doesn't rush, it comes in the stillness when you make space for it. Let your sleep become sacred again. Let your body remember what it means to rest, not just to collapse. And watch over time how everything changes, not just your nights, but your mornings. Not just your energy, but your presence. This is where your healing begins, not with noise or effort, but with quiet intention and a willingness to care for the body that has carried you this far. And trust me, it's not done yet, not even close. There comes a moment in every man's life, sometimes loud, but more often silent, when he realizes that his body no longer responds the way it once did. It's not a sudden fall or a sharp pain, it's a quieter unraveling. A stiffness in the morning, a lost connection at night. A sense that something essential has gone missing. Not stolen, but misplaced. And for too many, that moment becomes a quiet surrender. They believe it's the beginning of the end. But I want to tell you something very different. As a doctor who has walked alongside men for decades, and now, as an old man myself, I've come to understand that what we often label as decline is, in truth, a signal, a call from the body not to give up, but to pay attention, to return. Because beneath the fatigue, the stiffness, the fading confidence, there is still a current of life waiting to be restored. What we've explored in this journey through simple, thoughtful movements, deep breathing, and intentional presence is not a medical miracle. It is not about turning back the clock. It is about turning inward. Listening. Reconnecting to the parts of ourselves that we've neglected, forgotten, or dismissed as too old to matter. The 5 practices I've shared, from the pulse pump in your calves to the nightly stretch that welcomes restful sleep, are not exercises in the traditional sense. They are messages. Each movement says to your body, I still care. I still believe in you. I still want to live fully. And when you send those messages often enough, consistently enough, the body begins to believe them. Circulation returns. Sensation returns. Strength returns, not just in your limbs, but in your spirit. The most powerful transformations I've seen were not in men who lifted the heaviest weights or ran the fastest miles. They were in men who chose to show up for themselves again. Men who chose to be curious instead of bitter. Who chose to move instead of freeze. Who chose to breathe, stretch, and feel despite the world telling them they were past their prime. And the truth? There is no such thing as past your prime. Not when you are still breathing. Not when you are still willing to try. The heart does not expire at 60 or 70. Desire does not vanish with a birthday. What vanishes is belief, the quiet belief that we still have something worth tending, something worth waking up for. But belief can return. That is what I hope this journey has offered you, a reminder that your body is not your enemy. It's your oldest companion. It has carried you, protected you, endured more than words can say, and it's still listening. Still willing to respond if you're willing to speak to it, not through words, but through action, through movement, through presence. So tonight, or tomorrow morning, or whenever you feel the weight of time pressing against you, don't respond with silence. Respond with motion, with a breath, with a stretch, with a quiet message. I'm still here, and I still want to feel alive. Because you deserve that. You always have. The lesson here is simple but profound. Aging is not the loss of vitality, it is the invitation to deepen your relationship with it. To stop rushing past your body and finally listen to what it's been trying to say all along. You don't need to do everything. You just need to begin. Start with one movement, one breath, one moment of care, and let that be enough for now. Question for you. What do you believe is the most important part of staying strong as we age? A. Moving your body every day. B. Staying connected to your sense of purpose. Let me know your answer by commenting A or B below. Your insight might help another man reading today who feels the same things you do. Let's support one another. This is not just a channel, it's a community. If this message touched you, I kindly ask you to subscribe to this channel. And if you feel moved to support the work I do, a small donation would mean the world. I may be retired, but my purpose hasn't retired with me. I continue to share because I still believe in helping. Your support, whether through words, clicks, or coins, gives me the strength to keep going, keep speaking, and keep serving. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for choosing not to give up on yourself.